visited Oxford, and I spent some money on it. I just arrived back in England from 4 years studying in Canada, and it's an Anglo-Saxon dictionary. And it's one of my favourite books by Henry Sweet, who was one of the great philologists of Oxford University. And it's the origin of the English language, it's the Old English, Anglo-Saxon, which you can read if you understand the runes. And that's where you learn about the importance of weird as destiny, and is related to our word. In Anglo-Saxon, your destiny is your words. What you speak to other people creates your karma. So weird is what your speaking creates. And it's also in the word world. World is the age of humanity. We are living in the world because the essence of a human is a word. That's what we're called. It's our truth, it's our speakingness that makes us human. And that's why, as Zoroaster said, if we start telling lies, we unravel all that, and the world goes down. So we have to remember how to tell truth to each other, and create a good destiny. So all this stuff you can study if you study Anglo-Saxon and Old Norse. In my dictionary that goes with the 99 names of peace, I put Icelandic as another language, similar to Norwegian but different. Very like Old Norse.
It is not like Old Norse, it is Old Norse because the Icelandic people came from Norway.
Yeah, and they kept the old
rock
speech.
in the sea.
Yeah. Have you been to Iceland as well?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
In Reykjavik.
Yeah.
On business, so I haven't been able to
Explore much.
explore, unfortunately. That's another one on my tick list, that I'd rent a motorbike or take my own motorbike and
Yeah.
do Iceland.
No, we all have to do Iceland. I've got this actress coming who's spent a lot of time in Iceland, coming to visit here, probably in April or something. But so yes, and the old Norse myths have been kept alive by the Icelandic scholars, who Snorri Sturluson and these kind of people. These were great scholars who wrote down the Icelandic Norse myths, and yeah, so hats off to them all, really. But I would just finish by saying the point of all this was peace through wisdom. That's why Woden is the god of knowledge and wisdom and understanding. And the work isn't finished yet. You know, we have to save this planet from going down by reminding everybody the path of wisdom, like the pre-Socratics said, is is the only thing that can stop entropy, really, because we're stuck on this planet in the middle of nowhere. I mean, entropy is the rule. We have to be against entropy and find the life force enough to carry on with our the genius of life. And the other rune I like is Ing, which is the life force itself. Do you have Ing in Norwegian, the sound Ing?
Well, sound Ing is parts of word, yes, we have, but not it's not standalone.
Not a standalone rune.
No.
No.
But we have feiring, celebration, for example.
Okay.
So there is a lot of ing in.
There's a lot of Ing words.
In words, yes,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
not standalone. Huh?
Okay, so I think Ing is the name of one of the most important gods, the god of love, Frey, sometimes called.
Frøya.
That's the goddess, but Frey was the male equivalent.
Yeah.
And Frey was also called Ing. So he's the god of love for the Norse people. And when I went to Stavanger, I went to the old archaeological museum in that city, and I discovered there was a great pillar to Ing, which is a phallic pillar. These old Norse people, they loved their phalluses, and they stuck them up in the countryside as something of sacredness to worship. Just like in India, Shiva is represented by a phallus, and you have these phallic stones in temples and things.
I think the stone you were talking about were actually vandalized, and it was broken off the big the big penis in the rock.
What, recently?
A couple of years back.
Really?
Yeah.
What's in the museum? Somebody went in the museum?
Not in the it was out in the field, the big one.
Okay.
And somebody found it obscene.
Oh dear, probably a Christian who didn't.
Probably.
They'd never studied with me. Didn't
Probably.
understand.
Anyway,
Yeah.
they got government fundings and they fixed it. They put it back up
Oh, they put it back up.
Yeah.
Okay.
because it was a symbol for it was
For fertility and life.
absolutely, and it
Yeah.
was also a historical piece
Yeah.
out in the countryside.
Sure, one shouldn't desecrate these things.
No.
And what these people knew is that sex is sacred, it's a holy thing. And therefore it should be celebrated. And they love their midsummer festivals, that's when they celebrate.
Yep.
You know, so long may it last. And I think there's a direct connection between these Norse rune masters and the Indian ones who were doing Sanskrit and discovering the mantra sounds over in India and worshipping Shiva. Well, it's the same life force, you know, Shiva and Shakti.
Hi.
So it's amazing. I love it. Right.
Talking about midsummer, I'd like to shoot in just a little detail.
Oh, okay.
One midsummer evening, early 80s, I think.
Yeah.
I had to go to Amsterdam with some goods that was to be shipped to one of our ships,
Okay.
which was held back in South Africa. So I needed to go down there and save a day of freight.
Ah.
But the 280 kilo turbine as luggage.
You were taking an engine from Amsterdam.
A turbine
To Cape Town.
to Amsterdam to get it on a flight to South Africa. It was still in the era of white supremacy down South Africa. So only South Africa Airways flew to Europe, and they flew once a day, I think, from Johannesburg to.
And they got a huge turbine on the plane.
I got it on a plane from Bergen to Amsterdam as a luggage to save a day of freight. On the way back, which was a story on the Midsummer Night, the pilot took us down. This was in the evening, just in the dusk, and took us down and flew in the Oslo fjord, quite low level. You saw all these bonfires along the fjord. It was a fantastic sight.
Oh, amazing.
It was
On Midsummer Eve.
on Midsummer Eve.
Oh, wow. All along the shores of the
All
Oslo
along the
Fjord.
shores of the fjord, and so yeah.
Yes. I've been to Oslo. It's amazing, and the Viking ship in the museum. Yeah, they were quite enterprising people, these Old Norse, with their runes, because they went as far as Iceland, but they also went as far as Greenland and North America.
North America, long before anybody thought about the name Columbus and stuff.
Sure, no, way before. And they also made it across to, like, the Slavic world, down to Kiev
Yeah.
and Novgorod, and what we call the Rus were probably Vikings. So
Yeah, Miklagard is a old Norwegian name, I think, for Kiev or thereabouts. I'm not sure.
yeah. So there's a lot of history there, and a lot of karma to unravel.
Yeah.
If we're going to set up this Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Russia and Ukraine, we're going to have to get some Norse scholars and sages involved to try and heal these splits, because they've helped cause all this trouble, going way back. And I think, going back to the question of the arche, I think what philosophers of peace need to ask is, what is the arche of these conflicts? Go back to the source and then tweak them so that you unravel the conflict. It's like a sort of knot in history. I think a true rune master can time travel back to the source, the arche of these conflicts, mentally unravel the knots, and then that heals it back into our time zone. That's quite advanced magic. I've written about this in my book on peace magic, but kind of that's one of the things we do, and that's why it's worth studying history, is you can learn to time travel and then readjust the knots of conflict. It works.
As we probably all have learned over the years, is the first loser in any war is the truth.
that's why I'm against war, because as a philosopher I want more truth. I want science to flourish. I want to discover what photons are really made of. I want to understand how we can travel faster than the speed of light, in spite of the theory of relativity. I want to understand the maths to outthink relativity theory so we can travel faster than light. But we can't do all this stuff if we're still throwing rockets and bombs at each other and blowing up libraries and killing intellectuals, you know, and torturing scientists and
Stuff like that.
stuff like that. So that's why peace and knowledge, you know, come together, in my opinion. Talking of which, final little thing here, since you brought up the South Africa issue and apartheid and the sort of the arrogance of some Norse people in the Nazi period was that, well, we're the best race, we're the Aryans, we can rule the world, you know, the Semites are terrible, we don't like them, so we'll just kill them off. I mean, that was all rather stupid. They've just discovered the diaries of Unity Mitford, who was an English aristocratic lady who fell in love with Adolf Hitler and absolutely adored him. She wrote these diaries about it. And they've just been discovered and published. Historians like me are fascinated because it shines a light on. She met Hitler something like 169 times to chat and have meals with and everything. But anyway, that whole ideology of Nazism was based on the false idea that the Norse people were the only and the best and the supreme and the wisest. And the Semites don't count, they're not important, kill them off. Now, that's why I wrote this very subversive book. It's called The Kabbalah Runes. And in this subversive book, I've proved, I believe, beyond a shadow of doubt, that the runes and the Kabbalah understanding in Hebrew go back to a common source in prehistory. Like, so, all the Semitic languages, like Phoenician, Babylonian, Akkadian, Ancient Egyptian, Hebrew, Arabic and stuff, they're what we call Semitic or Hamito-Semitic languages. They have this esoteric idea that God speaks through different sounds, and that's what creates life. And that's what the Kabbalah studies, particularly in Hebrew, but also Arabic, because Muhammad knew this. It's in the Quran, I've explained that. And so, but what I've explained in my book, in this book, is that the knowledge that's in the Semitic Kabbalah ultimately is the same as the knowledge in the runes. It goes back to a common universal source of sonic mysticism. And so the tragedy of Nazism was trying to kill the wisdom keepers of Semitic Kabbalistic wisdom when they were their own long-distant brothers and cousins and long-distant relatives. You know, they should have studied each other's wisdom instead of trying to, like, kill each other. And to me, that's how you prove the, you know, there's no ultimate winners in the race for civilization. Every culture is sacred. Whether you're American, Indian, Ancient Egyptian, Greek, Latin, Norse, whatever. We all have our wisdom and we're all equidistant for eternity. So that's why racism and, you know, my people are the best is stupid. And unfortunately, you know, it's practiced everywhere. And that's the other thing we have to untie, those knots. And rethink so that we have more humility, more authentic piety, I think, when approaching these mysteries. So anyway, that's my little... So I recommend, this is the text. And there's only one other guy previously who's argued this, and that was the librarian to the Queen of Sweden, Queen Christina, one of the wisest monarchs of Sweden, who renounced the throne and became a Catholic and went to live in Rome. Like, why wouldn't one? It's got better libraries than Sweden, or it did in those days.
If you know Italian.
Well, Latin. She knew Latin. She was a friend of Descartes. She got him to come and teach her. I mean, in those days, all monarchs learned Latin. But anyway, Boreas was her librarian and master sage, and he wrote about the runes, because he was interested in Old Swedish. And he had the intuition, because they had discovered the Kabbalah then in Sweden, and the esoteric mysteries in Rome as well. And this guy Boreas realised, hey, the Kabbalah and the runes are the same thing. He's the only guy to have said that in the 1600s. And then I came along and worked it out independently. Before having discovered him, I never realised, Boreas had got there first. But I've referenced him, But bless him. Anyway, we're all just, as Kerstler said, we're all bringing bricks to Babel. Okay, final one. Let's do a god, because we're taking it up a notch here. We'll go to the divine realm and see what divine wisdom we can draw upon. Anyway, it's a really good day today. We've got the ceasefire here. I'll let you choose. What divine wisdom can bring us peace permanently? We don't want just a ceasefire. We want the wars to finish.
That's the problem.
Yeah. It is a problem. Yeah.
You want a permanent security. Yeah, this is not acceptable in our philosophical.
Well, I don't want. You see,
The
the
weird thing about Nazism is that
right. Well done.
Kremlin now claims that just a thought that popped up.
Sure.
Claims that the Ukrainians are ruled by Nazis, which is a load of bullocks.
Sure.
But could it be that he had a little brief look into historic books and seen that the Vikings actually were there, and the combining the Vikings and Nordic with the Nazis, the Aryans, whatever. You never know what's moving in those circles.
Yeah, I think Putin has, like Hitler, he's dabbled in the esoteric and the occult.
Mm-hmm.
He's got people in his circle around who've gone into it deeply, like Dugin and people. And, there's a long tradition of occult studies in Russia, even at Stalin's time. But they've misunderstood it, and they've tried to convert it into something powerful for Russia as the victor, like the racist.
Yeah.
And that's not
Russia
the
won
point.
the World War alone, didn't they?
Well, that's the myth, isn't
Yeah.
it? And they're the heroic people, and the Ukrainians aren't serious. And it's that arrogance that I was talking about. And the irony is that a lot of Nazi worship of Hitler lives on in Putin's circles. In fascist circles, which have all been documented by Timothy Snyder, The Road to Unfreedom. So if you want the details of Russian fascism and Hitler worship, the greatest sage, well, if that's the right word, Ivan Ilyin, who was a worshipper of Hitler, a white Russian who hated the Bolsheviks and went to Germany, he is Putin's mentor philosophically. Putin loves Ilyin, and he had his body brought to Petersburg to be reburied. So, and that guy was a Nazi supporter. So, everything Putin's been saying about, against the Ukrainians is a complete, absolute lie.
We just flipped it.
It's just totally deceitful. And that goes back to what we were saying earlier about lies. How can we get peace when people are full of that degree of lying? It's like people denying the Holodomor, what was done to the Ukrainians by the Bolsheviks.
Yeah, there's truth, and the first people that goes in jail in Russia today, in Germany during the World War and the occupied countries, were the people that knew stuff.
Yeah, the people that told the truth, the intellectuals.
Don't like that.
Well, bless them, Fortunately, here in France, we do believe in freedom of speech and liberty of thought. And we have a respect for intellectuals, so we have the freedom to share philosophy here. And as long as we've got it, we'll carry on. Okay, so what card have you got? Let's do yours first.
Queen of Earth, Pan.
I like Pan. We haven't had Pan for a while. Pan is a fascinating deity, ancient Greek, the god of nature. And
complex to read. Herman là?
Yeah, we'll come to him next. We'll do Pan first. Okay, we've got two here. So Pan is the wild god of the woods, the fields, the forests. He's untamed. He's the primal force of nature. And the Greeks were very clever to have Pan in their pantheon. Some said the word is related to the word all. Pan is everything, because Pan in Greek meant everything. Pantheon is all the gods. He appeared sometimes in history. Greeks, had sightings of Pan. But if you want to know who Pan is, just take your girlfriend or boyfriend out in the woods on a really hot, lovely summer day with a picnic, a bottle of wine, and some music, and just enjoy the afternoon together and enjoy each other. And that Pan is a sensual deity. He loves pleasure and the dance and music, and the Pan pipes. He's playing his Pan pipes. Were his chosen thing. So I think it's a reminder that we humans really, want to worship Pan deep down. At some level. We don't want to go on worshipping the god of war, violence and killing. We want to get on the right course with Pan. And I think I discovered some interesting stuff about Pan. Firstly, there was a city in Egypt called Panopolis, which was dedicated to Pan by the Greeks when they got to Egypt. And it was the haven and centre of the alchemical mysteries of ancient Egypt. It's where Zosimus lived, who was the founder of alchemy. And it was where the esoteric Gnostic Christians used to go, Panopolis. And it's where we found the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. In a graveyard, it was hidden in a wall, the manuscript. So Pan is quite interesting. And then the other thing that I discovered, joining these things together, there's a place in the north of Galilee, in the mountains overlooking Galilee, at the foot of Mount Hermon, there's a cave dedicated to Pan. The Romans knew about it. They put a temple there. And that was the place Jesus used to go with his innermost disciples to play what is called the Who Do You Think I Am game. Jesus would get together with his disciples, they'd go to the cave of Pan, and he'd say, well, who do you think I am? And then each of the disciples would say something in turn, like, I think you're the wisest philosopher who's ever lived. Matthew said that. I think you're the king and Messiah. Peter said that. And Thomas said, Rabbi, I cannot say what I think you are. My mouth cannot speak it. And then at that point, Jesus said, okay, bingo, you win the game this time. Because the point is that mere words, although, the runes are amazing and everything, there's a level of ontological reality that's beyond even the reach of sound and speech. And that's where Jesus was coming from. So, and I discovered that I went to that cave on a trip in the 90s when it was all peaceful. And I was very impressed. And away that cave, the water gushes out, which becomes the Jordan River. And then you can follow the Jordan gushing all the way down to Galilee. And it becomes the Sea of Galilee, and then from there it goes down. So, and that's why Thomas, I think, embodied that wisdom. That's the Gnostic answer to the Who Do You Think I Am game, which they played in this place of Pan. Now, my understanding is that Jesus was learned in the ways of the Egyptians, as well as the Hebrews. That he was a universal thinker who studied in Egypt, and all the evidence points to this. the god equivalent to Pan was called Min in the Egyptian pantheon. And Herodotus wrote that according to the Egyptians, Pan was the most ancient of all the gods. I.e., we come from nature, right? And of course, if you look at the card, he's got goat's feet and little horns. And of course, this became the devil in medieval Christian thinking, which was a distortion of what Christ was actually teaching, because nature isn't evil. If you know what Pan is about, nature is beautiful and amazing. We are from nature. And the Green Movement knows this.
Smell is not so good, but that's okay.
Goats are fine. We love goats. We love goat's cheese. Others say, later they said, no, Pan was the son of Hermes. And that's interesting, because Hermes is the god of the mysteries and the Hermetic wisdom.
Yes.
So Pan is the son of Hermes, according to later thought. Anyway, I give a lot of details. And there's a Homeric hymn to Pan, which has come down early on. Muse, tell me about Pan, the dear son of Hermes, with his goat's feet and 2 horns, a lover of merry noise. Through wooded glades he wanders with dancing nymphs, who foot it on some sheer cliff's edge, calling upon Pan, the shepherd god, long-haired, unkempt. The original hippie god, really. And that's why the hippie movement all went back to nature, because they're all Pan worshippers. And one of the most important pagans of the 20th century, Aleister Crowley, wrote a hymn to Pan, because of course he loved him. Thrill with lissome lust of the light, O man, my man, come careering out of the night of Pan. Lo, Pan. He was a great lover of Pan. And that's why pagans often try to do their rituals out of doors. I've done, rituals with druids and other pagans, and we like to do it out of doors because that's where Pan lives. So I think it's an auspicious card you've drawn. Well done. And there was I'll just say one last thing. There was a famous event in history when a ship bound to Alexandria heard a voice coming out of the mist saying, Pan is dead. Pan is dead. And that was taken as a kind of symbol of the end of paganism. It was around the time everyone was becoming Christian. And that was regarded by savants as a kind of epochal event. But I would like to put forward the thesis that Pan is not dead. Pan is not dead because he lives on in the tarot of the gods and in all right-minded people that love nature. We can't allow nature to go down because we are nature. Okay, there we are. And now, that was just the preamble, because now comes the main card, which is, we had Avestan and Zoroaster, right? This is the god of light, Ahura Mazda, who defeats Angela Menu. This is the god of wisdom and truth and light, who is the, ultimately the guarantor that this human experiment is going to have a happy denouement. We're not going into it's Ahura Mazda that's brought about the ceasefire, for instance, and can convert it into a permanent truce between Israel and Palestine. It's Ahura Mazda that can bring about peace between Ukraine and Russia. We have to take it up to that level, I think. And the book explains exactly how we do that. It's the equivalent to the tarot card of the normal tarot of judgment. It's a time for judgment. So that concept in Zoroastrianism was the last judgment. But philosophers teach, like Hegel, that last judgment is always happening. It's now. It's not going to be coming sometime next year or the year after, or when. It's always within our grasp if we live according to truth and righteousness and Asher. We can bring that truth, that last judgment. And this is, I think, the problem with the eschatology of violence. It says we'll get to peace after we've defeated the enemy. When we've slaughtered every last Hamas person and bombed them all, then we'll have peace. Or from the Palestinian side, when we've kicked the last Israeli into the sea, we'll have peace. You know, no, all that thinking is wrong and doesn't understand this card, because Ahura Mazda genuinely wants peace at the highest wisdom level that we can achieve. I'm just waiting for when the Muslim, Christian, and Jewish community recognize each other as all emblems of eternal wisdom. You know,
Yeah.
that's what I'm waiting for. And one of the most famous intellectuals in 18th century France was a man called Chevalier Ramsay, 1686 to 1743. He was a Jacobite Freemason who came to Paris, left Scotland. He was Scottish. I discovered him in Scotland. And he was at the court of Saint-Germain, of the exiled Jacobite king of Britain, James II. And he set up French Freemasonry, basically, which was a sort of esoteric traditions. And he gave a famous lecture about the mission of Freemasonry was to restore truth, justice, righteousness, and wisdom. And his wife, who loved him very much, called him Mon cher Zoroastre, my beloved darling Zoroaster, like his reincarnation. And yes, he wrote a famous book called The Travels of Cyrus, which was a novel about King Cyrus of Iran, who had his spiritual journey looking for the truths of Ahura Mazda, our God. So, you know, since those times, the Enlightenment, and that Freemasonic Lodge underpinned a lot of the Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire and all the rest. And it was a Frenchman, Anquetil Duperron, who went to India, to Pondicherry, and then to Bombay, and he brought back the Zoroastrian scriptures to Europe for the first time and translated them into French. And that's why we know what I'm talking about. You know, it was based on this French scholar, Anquetil Duperron. Great man. Yes, Camus said the same thing as what I just said. He put it in one of his plays, or in the Fall. Don't wait for the Last Judgment. It takes place every day. I love Camus. He got there. He did a PhD on philosophy and Christian Neoplatonism. Okay, well look, here we are. This has been a wonderful feast. We have Ahura Mazda and Pan making friends. So that's it. End of the world's cancelled, guys. We've got an extension. Any questions or comments on this?
When is spring coming?
When is spring coming? Yes, we do want spring and summer weather to come back. I heard it's coming. Yeah. Actually, I was thinking about this because I was thinking, oh, why is it so cold and stuff? And then I was looking at the sun, which is kind of weak and pale, and I was thinking, the sun told me something. I know this sounds crazy. It said, I can't be with you all strong and warm all the time because I have to be with the people down under, all warm and sunny. So you've just got to cope with a bit of discomfort.
Have patience.
Have patience. I'll be back later. You know, and I realised that if you were the sun god and you want, you know, you obviously want everybody to be nice and warm and everything, but on the other